Over November 17th and 18th, two transnational submarine cables in the Baltic Sea were severed within less than 24 hours. One of the cables connects Finland and Germany, while the other connects Sweden and Lithuania. There has been speculation that these submarine cables were intentionally cut. After the incident, the Chinese-owned cargo ship Yipeng 3 that was sailing in nearby waters was quickly identified as a target for investigation. Additionally, China's patents for technologies related to cutting submarine cables have attracted attention. According to a report by the Epoch Times on November 30th, submarine optical cables enable fast data transmission between countries and have significant economic and strategic value. Many countries are continuously developing and applying submarine cable technology. However, among China's similar invention patents, two patents stand out. These two technologies focus on how to secretly and quickly damage submarine optical cables. According to the data from the China Patent Office in 2011, the Chinese Naval Communications Research Institute applied for a patent titled, "A Deep-Sea Cable Submarine Shearing and Salvage Device." This technology primarily focuses on how to use a tugboat to cut submarine cables at a depth of 2,000 meters. The cutting speed is required to be fast, and the tugboat can cut the cable while in motion without needing to stop, making the cutting action highly covert. In 2020, a government-affiliated university in Zhejiang Province, China, Lishui University, also applied for a patent titled, "A Towed Submarine Cable Cutting Device and Cutting Method." The patent description displayed on the screen involves installing a cutting blade on the ship's anchor. When the tugboat sails, the anchor is placed on the seafloor and dragged along, allowing it to quickly sever submarine cables. So, do these patent technologies have any connection to the severing of the two submarine cables this time? The Wall Street Journal reported on November 28th that the Yipeng 3 dropped its anchor at around 9 p.m. local time on November 17th and towed the anchor for over 100 miles. Soon after, the anchor severed the cable between Sweden and Lithuania. During this time, the ship's transponder was kept off. Later, at around 3 a.m. the next day, the Yipeng 3 towed the anchor for another 111 miles in the same manner and cut the cable between Germany and Finland. After completing these two cuts, the Yipeng 3 retrieved its anchor and continued its voyage. Based on these unusual circumstances, investigators suspect that the Yipeng 3 deliberately towed the anchor along the seabed and severed the cables while sailing in the Baltic Sea. Subsequently, Danish Navy vessels began to pursue the Yipeng 3 and eventually forced it to stop sailing. Investigators then boarded the ship and inspected the hull and anchor, finding that the size and shape of the anchor matched the seabed drag marks at the incident site. The investigation also revealed that the captain of the Yipeng 3 is of Chinese nationality, and there was also a Russian crew member on board. On November 21st, the Swedish prosecutor's office announced that it had launched a preliminary investigation into the potential sabotage activities of the Yipeng 3. On November 22nd, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation also stated that it was conducting a criminal investigation into the Yipeng 3 on charges of serious criminal damage and severe interference with communications. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius stated at a press conference, "This is a very clear sign of sabotage, and no one believes these cables were cut accidentally. Personally, I'm also unwilling to believe that this was caused by an accident. While we still don't know who the culprit is, we believe this was a deliberate act of destruction." On November 28th, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson publicly stated that Sweden has demanded the Chinese ship return to Swedish waters and has formally requested Beijing to cooperate with the investigation.
As I've said before, Sweden has expressed our desire for the ship to move to Swedish waters. We are in contact also with China from Sweden. Today, I can also tell you that in addition to that, Sweden has also sent a formal request to China to cooperate with Swedish authorities in order to create clarity on what has happened. Is that we, of course, with this request, we Obviously, we think it's extremely important to find out exactly what had happened, and of course, we expect also China to comply with the request we have.
The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs denied responsibility for the incident, but claimed that it's willing to cooperate with the relevant countries. Li Jiangshu, a military expert at the Taiwan National Policy Foundation, believes that the Chinese authorities' softened stance and willingness to cooperate may be due to the unexpected speed with which the Yipeng 3 was captured, as well as uncertainty about how much concrete evidence the Nordic countries have gathered. Even if the Yipeng 3 is captured, the people on board are unlikely to admit that the Chinese government instructed them. They are more likely to claim that the cable was accidentally damaged during the ship's operations, or provide other excuses to downplay the incident. Beijing authorities are currently unwilling to firmly deny the allegations because the evidence is already in the hands of the other side, so they can only say that they will cooperate with the investigation. In fact, it isn't the first time that a Chinese cargo ship has damaged submarine cables. Voice of America reported that on February 16, 2023, the Taiwan National Communications and Broadcasting Commission confirmed that 2 submarine cables connecting Taiwan and Matsu were severed by Chinese fishing boats and cargo ships on February 2nd and 8th, respectively, causing over 50 days of internet outage in the Matsu region of Taiwan. Data from Taiwan's Changhua Telecom also shows that the Matsu submarine cables have been damaged more than 20 times in the past 5 years. Elizabeth Bra, a senior researcher at the American Enterprise Institute, told Voice of America, "This is a targeted harassment by the Chinese Communist Party against Taiwan or an exercise in cutting off external networks."
But what's happened, as you know, obviously in the past few years, is that Chinese fishing vessels and other commercial vessels have been harming the cables connecting the Matsu Islands to Taiwan proper a disproportionate number of times. And the challenge for Taiwan with that is that it's not a military attack. And China can say, oh, it was just commercial vessels and they didn't deliberately harm or cut the cables. And it's impossible for Taiwan to prove that it was deliberate. So it's very hard to retaliate, and it's also very hard to protect those cables. You can't have your Navy out, 24 hours a day, just sitting on top of the cables to make sure nobody harms them or cuts them. And that's why I think the Matsu Island case is so important, because I see it as a test run for China to test, how do people there manage to live, to go about their lives without proper internet, and i.e. without communications.
Wei Fengzhang, a senior researcher at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University in the US, also told Voice of America that all it takes is one missile to destroy a landing station to disrupt once and for all the connectivity of all the cables connected to it.
Similar to the tactic being used now by flying all these, military planes, fighter jets across the median line. Of course, we don't have evidence what happened last month, whether it's intentional or accidental. But I could see being a possibility that they would try to cut here and there, every now and then, to make it into a norm of day-to-day life for the Taiwanese people. If we think about how Hong Kong fell into the CCP's control in the last 10, 15 years also, it's because of these kind of gradual normalization of aggression. And so the Beijing was able to take away freedom from the people in Hong Kong bit by bit, and so that it's less alarming but more effective oftentimes. So I could see the same strategy being deployed in the sense of cable.
Another incident occurred in October 2023. A Chinese cargo ship, the Nunu Polar Bear, flying the Hong Kong flag, damaged the natural gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia. Finnish and Estonian authorities have yet to publicly announce whether the incident was intentional or accidental. However, a year later, the Chinese government itself admitted that it was an accidental incident. According to the South China Morning Post, the Chinese government conducted an internal investigation and later admitted that the Chinese cargo ship Nunu Polar Bear had damaged the Baltic Sea natural gas pipeline and submarine cables in October of the previous year. The investigation report stated that it was an accident. The Nunu Polar Bear belongs to a Chinese company called Nunu Shipping. The company, established in September 2022, owns 11 container cargo ships, and its chairman is Fan Yuxin. In October of the previous year, when the Baltic Sea natural gas pipeline and submarine cables were damaged, the governments of Estonia and Finland launched a joint criminal investigation. The investigation found drag marks on the seabed ranging from 1.5 to 4 meters in width, leading directly to the site where the natural gas pipeline was damaged. As a result, they suspect that the ship's anchor was dragged along the seabed, cutting off the natural gas pipeline and submarine cables. The Finnish National Bureau of Investigation stated that the investigation is still ongoing. Regarding the incident of the submarine cables being cut, Shenming Shi, a researcher and director at Taiwan's National Defense and Security Research Institute, stated that cutting cables was a deliberate act and that China developed this patented technology with a specific purpose in mind. These patented inventions prove that Chinese Navy or other government-supported research institutions have already developed specialized equipment for cutting submarine cables. Whether it's the cables between Taiwan and Matsu or the recent incidents in European waters, it can almost be confirmed that these were deliberate actions by Chinese cargo ships. Shenming Shi also stated that for China, the tactics in unrestricted warfare or various actions in the gray area have moved beyond just concepts and have evolved into concrete tools and systems. The Chinese Communist Party is now putting them into action. China's gray zone operations aren't limited to the Indo-Pacific or the Taiwan Strait, but also target NATO countries. China's stance is in opposition to NATO, and there could even be a military conflict in the future due to the Taiwan Strait issue, with Beijing preparing for such an eventuality. Su Jiayun, director of the Strategic and Resources Department at Taiwan's National Defense and Security Research Institute, stated that cutting technology is used when updating submarine cables, such as when recovering cables from the seabed. However, if this technology is maliciously exploited by the Chinese Communist Party, it can be used for destructive purposes. The Chinese Communist Party's actions of cutting submarine cables operate in a gray area. The CCP has always been skilled at exploiting this gray zone, converting generally commercial technologies into military uses, a practice known as civilian-to-military conversion, or dual use of military and civilian. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with your friends. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.